Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So today we need to take a little bit of a look at a genuinely huge news story. Like a properly big news story. Which might not sound like such a big news story, but I assure you, ladies and gentlemen, this is a gigantic news story. Shout out to Melkor and Primal Lugia for hooking me up and telling me that this was happening. Basically, over on the Chinese language website for Pokemon, there is this image, and if you do the whole Google Translate thing, it says, Simplified Chinese version of Pokemon trading card game will be released soon, and there is a live stream on the 28th of September. Now, some of you at this stage are going, hang on a second, Wassy. We've already got Pokemon cards in Chinese. And on the one hand, yes, we do. And on the other hand, no, we don't. Because you see, I often show you cool cards in Chinese, but I'm always very careful in my wording. I always tell you they're from Hong Kong and Taiwan, or I always tell you they are the Chinese language. I am very careful not to say released in China, or I try and avoid just saying Chinese cards, because they're Chinese language cards released in Hong Kong and Taiwan. And that is a very, very, very big difference. Because as it stands at the moment, all of these Pokémon TCG products are being released in Hong Kong and Taiwan, and in what is generally referred to as traditional Chinese. Now, this is very, very important, because when we talk about the Chinese language, stick to the written language for the moment for ease of use, there are basically two things we're talking about. There is traditional Chinese, which is used in Hong Kong and Taiwan, and then there is Simplified Chinese, which is used on mainland China. If there is anybody who knows more about this stuff than I do, because I will admit this is not an area of my expertise, please do add some extra context in the comments and I will pin it, or I'll do an own if I'm collating a bunch together, whatever. But the point is, what this basically says is that the Pokemon trading card game is coming to mainland China. Now, there are a bunch of things we could say about mainland China, but the most important for this particular news story is, it is the most populous nation in the world. And when I say it's the most populous country in the world, I mean it is by a huge, well, kind of by a huge margin. According to infoplease.com, here are the top three. We've got China at 1.4 billion, India at 1.36 billion, and then the US at 330,000. So you've basically got China and India that are miles ahead of everybody else in terms of population, and then you've got the US. Now, there's nothing about the Pokemon trading card game coming to India for the moment. We're not going to be talking about that. But what this basically means is that the Pokémon TCG is coming to a market which is basically 4 times the size of the United States. The most populous country in which the Pokemon trading card game is currently being sold is the United States. And mainland China is basically 4 times the size. Now, this is where it gets a little bit awkward, because InfoPlease are clearly including dependencies like Hong Kong, which, again, muddies the numbers. But let's not go too deep into it in terms of how we're calculating the population. Again, not the point of this video. The point of this video is China is gigantic. And if the Pokemon trading card game can make some inroads into a nation that large, this spells huge things for the Pokemon TCG. Now, it does also lead to a huge amount of questions. One of which, of course, does that mean simplified language Chinese cards? Yes, that one should be pretty easy. At the moment, we got traditional Chinese language cards being printed for Taiwan and Hong Kong. This should introduce simplified Chinese language cards, which in theory will then add another language. Now remember, at the World Championships this year, they actually added 3 languages to the amount of cards that were available, one of which was actually traditional Chinese. Well, now in theory they're going to be adding another language. So we could see the world promos getting even bigger in terms of languages. But I think it's fair to say that we're going to be getting a new language and that it will eventually become prevalent like all the other languages. Now, the other question is, what cards are they going to be allowed to use? Are people in China going to be able to use traditional Chinese language cards? Now, it is interesting that Hong Kong and Taiwan have finally caught up. I did have a chat with the lovely Primal Lugia about this, who reminded me that essentially the Hong Kong and Taiwan, the traditional Chinese language cards, they initially released in October 2019, and it took them about a year to catch up. Shiny Star V was when they actually caught up, and now we're getting pretty much simultaneous releases. So if we go over right now to the Pokémon TCG Hong Kong Facebook page, which is weirdly a great place to get Pokémon TCG news if you're interested in, well, Chinese language cards, you will notice that, as I showed you the other day, they are currently doing the Rainbow Rare Lucario V-Star promotion tournament, call it what you will, which of course coincides with the release of Incandescent Arcana, which is the most recent set which has been released. And look, they're up to date. It's all well and good. Now, over on the E4 boards, which are generally used by collectors, somebody has mentioned that trademarks have shown that Sun and Moon cards could be coming first for China. I'm not entirely sure that's true. Now, when a trademark has been done, a trademark doesn't mean they are doing it. A trademark means that they are protecting themselves or leaving their options open or going to do it. So maybe trademarking Sun and Moon means Sun and Moon cards are coming, or maybe it just means they want the option. Or maybe it means that they are trying to protect themselves because they think other people are going to potentially try and use that trademark in some regard. So I wouldn't read too much into the trademark. It doesn't make much sense. If Pokemon want to go into the Chinese market properly, if they really want to go for it, they need to catch up. It is the Pokemon trading card game. And although it is for collectors, it is also a game which is meant to be played. And if the simplified Chinese cards are 2 years, 3 years behind everybody else, that's not going to work in terms of having a proper player base. Now, there are all kinds of questions of, are there going to be tournaments? One would imagine there will be. We don't know for certain. How big are they going to be? How often are they going to be? We don't know. Is there going to be a qualification route to the World Championships? You would imagine there will be, because there is for basically every other country. And then we go to questions of what cards are going to be legal. Are the Hong Kong and Taiwan cards going to be legal for tournaments? That would be a sensible solution while they caught up. That could work. But we don't actually know one way or the other if that's going to be the way it goes. Would be cool if they did. Are Japanese cards going to be legal? Maybe. That would also help in some ways to alleviate the pressure. And I know there are a bunch of people apparently in Hong Kong and Taiwan who do prefer using Japanese language cards in their tournaments. So maybe that's one option. Maybe they go down that road. It all depends on what's available and it all depends on what's legal. We also don't know when they're going to start being released. Having said that, the fact that there is a live stream which has gone out would suggest very strongly that it is going to be soon. That these cards are going to start being released soon. Maybe it's going to be with the release of Scarlet and Violet. Of course, we are assuming that we kind of know that early next year, Scarlet and Violet is going to make its debut in the Pokemon trading card game. So it would make sense that Pokemon over in China would go, right, okay, let's just start off with Scarlet and Violet. That's nice and easy. Having said that, when Scarlet and Violet is there, we're still going to have, Regulation Mark E onwards is still going to be legal. For us, basically, it is going to be Battle Styles On. Not exactly, but near enough. It's going to be Battle Styles On that's legal. So if we only see the products for Scarlet and Violet being released in the Chinese language, in simplified Chinese, well, that's going to be awkward because we've actually got 2 years worth of cards that are going to be legal. That's going to be super awkward. Or maybe they do what they did in Hong Kong and Taiwan, where they basically had catch-up sets. Now, I don't know how many of you remember this, but the first Hong Kong and Taiwan cards were actually... they were very, very different. They were basically sets that were made up of lots of other sets. It was basically a, hey, we're miles behind, let's catch up as fast as we can kind of thing. And I can't tell you that is what they're going to do, but I can tell you that that would make a huge amount of sense. So, questions abound, quite frankly, ladies and gentlemen, questions abound. We don't know when it's going to release. We don't know what cards are going to release. We don't know what languages they're going to be able to play with. We don't know how fast they're going to catch up, etc., etc. A lot of questions I've laid out in this video because all we've got at the moment is an announcement that it's coming in a week, but we don't really know what it is. But this is huge. And please, 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 do not underestimate quite how huge this is. Essentially, if the Pokémon TCG can gain a foothold in China, the market to which they're selling is absolutely ballooning. And if the game gets more popular, that is largely a good thing for anyone that likes the game, because a more popular game is a more healthy game, which means it keeps rolling and rolling, which is exactly what we want. Although... do we really want a bunch of people in mainland China importing all the Japanese cards, making it harder for people like me trying to import them into the UK? Yes, I am aware of the hypocrisy in that statement. Maybe. I don't know. For now, ladies and gentlemen, I've left you with a bunch of questions. When we know more, I will, of course, let you know more. For now, I want to know what you think about this news. I want to know what your predictions are. I want to know anything you want to tell me. So let me know in the comment section, would you? Go nuts! Be nice! And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWasi. That's where we talk Pokemon and a bunch of other games. Some card games, some other games. All good times. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCGradio, where you can support the channel, get weekly bonus pods where I answer all of your questions, join a Discord to chat with us, or indeed... get a shout out on the podcast, like the lovely Javier Garcia, who has been a supporter of ours for a long time, one of our longest Patreons. Very lovely person. Thank you very much for the support, and thank you for being a very lovely person. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.